Hey friends, Powwow Guy here. I just want to kind of talk about this kind of interesting, I don't know if it's a trend or what, but in Pennsylvania Dutch culture, all the greats within the powwow tradition, the powwowers that are famous throughout history, like Nelson Rehmeyer and Sophia Baylor, Gertie Geis, even Nellie Knoll, as well as others. One of the common threads, Mountain Mary. Now, I talked about them once before in a different video, but this time I want to focus on the solitude of a powwow. Uh, Powwow is, by its very nature, just kind of a personal, one-person show. It's not a group sort of tradition, which is why Phoenix Line didn't ultimately really make any sense. Like, yes, people learned within Phoenix Line, but for us to remain together as a group didn't make sense. While it's nice to stay in contact with each other as friends, maybe exchange ideas once in a while, it doesn't make sense for us within the structure of our tradition for us to remain like this cohesive group. It's just unheard of. I was talking today to some people about powwow and saying how as I get older, I have this need to be alone, to be left alone, to kind of separate from the world, to stay away from social media, to stop watching the news, and honestly, I barely leave my house, but really there is this, it's almost a spiritual need to just kind of be alone with my thoughts, be alone to communicate with God, be alone to just make my medicines and, you know, do what I do as a powwower. There's this kind of need for solitude. And, I've heard this in other folk traditions where the people get to this age and this sort of point in their skill and their level of understanding and learning and their gained wisdom, they retreat. That's when you find the hermits in the caves and the people like building these cabins alone, living alone in the forest. I feel like I'm getting there. Now, I'm married. We have a son. So clearly I'm not going to leave my family. But, what is it about spirituality and God and even like magical practice that drives some of us to sort of separate from the world and, become the proverbial hermit, the person in the cabin. Growing up on my grandfather's property was a man who lived in this sort of shack slash cabin on my grandfather's property, just across the creek, this little bridge that my grandfather had built. And we knew him as Rolly. Now, Rolly, over 40 years ago, Rolly performed this thing where he cured a wound, using butcher paper, meat from the butcher shop, placed it on the wound and it cured it. So I believe Rolly was a powwower, but he lived alone in this cabin. He didn't want to be bothered. He had all sorts of weird things hanging from the trees around his cabin. He had crosses up, and his cabin looked like it was made out of whatever bits of junk he could find. And that's all I really remember. I mean, we're going back to the 1970s. But I could see myself getting to that point. I could see, you saw even Nelson Rehmeyer. He was married and had three daughters, but his powwowing had so overtaken his life that his wife and daughters lived in a separate house. And he lived alone in this sort of isolated house where he was visited at all hours of the day and night for people who needed powwowing. And even people who are into like witchery and such. I remember hearing people said, "Oh, they want to be the witch in the woods in a cabin alone with a million cats and their herbs and their remedies and their spells and potions and such." I get that. I can get that sense where you just want to be left alone. You've reached a level in your learning and your understanding and your spirituality where you want to separate yourself from the world. And I believe that comes to a lot of us. Like, we reach this point where we realize that we can go no further until we make that final break, that final cut from the world. And that's the trick, isn't it? Can we do that? So anyway, I just thought it was it's been on my mind. It's been weighing on my mind. The Phoenixes own several acres in Clinton County. So I will have the chance to have kind of my isolation area where I'll be able to see clients for powwow if they want to travel up to me there. But that won't be my full-time home. Obviously, that will be when I'm up there, I'll, put the word out. But not everybody has that opportunity or that privilege to own some land far away, away from civilization, where you can be by yourself and reflect on your spirituality and commune with God in the way that you need to, and just be kind of left alone. So I'm curious what any of you think about this. Is this something you've experienced? Is this something maybe in your magical tradition that is kind of like a natural progression of your growth? But there it is. Let me know. God bless you guys. Love you. And let's talk soon.